Hello everybody, this is Yasmin from Yarkspiri fantasyart.com, and we are slowly coming to a conclusion for these Photoshop tutorials. I've shown you mainly the basics that you need to know if you're actually doing painting or illustrations in Photoshop. Now, maybe in the future I may actually redo some of the videos I did, make them more basic for those of you who are actually not very familiar with using a computer, and maybe go more in depth. But as it stands now, I'm just going to wrap up some final features that you should be aware of and be comfortable using. Now, some of these may have been covered also in previous tutorials, so make sure to check the playlist to see if you maybe missed one or two videos, because they will help you out. So if I go to the top here and I go to my image option here, I can choose the mode that I want to have my image in. Currently, my mode is set to CMYK color, which is very productive if you're doing printing. I would set this up to RGB color though if I was exclusively using these images for a web browser or screenshots or anything of the sort. Grayscale is really good if you just want essentially a grayscale image, and if you want to just remove all the color that's already in it while maintaining the values. So if I go into adjustments here, I have pretty much almost everything that I started off with in my layers adjustments. So they're also up here in case you want to know. So up here is my layers adjustments, but also in the bottom I also have another button that I can click and also get access to those. But the third method is to actually go to image and adjustments, and then once again you get the same type of filters with some additional ones as well. I do not recommend using auto contrast or auto tone. I always recommend using the brightness and contrast and levels and curves yourself, because once you get a firm grasp on how to properly use these tools, they will save you a lot of time, and you also get more control over the final results. So for this reason, I really recommend that you get comfortable with at least these three options here. Image size is pretty self-explanatory. It's when you set up your image to the dimensions and resolution that you want. Now you can always go back and change these by going to image and image size, but you can also use a keyboard shortcut, which I'm going to currently show you. And the keyboard shortcut is you hold down the Control-Alt key and then tap the I key. And when you do that, you get the same type of menu that will pop up. So canvas size, the nice thing about changing the canvas size is it does not stretch or skew your existing image. It changes purely the canvas size. So if I actually decide to do that, you'll notice that I have 11 by 18, but maybe I want to have 14 by 18. I can go ahead and change it. As you can see, I now have a grayed out border beside the two areas that I did change the measurement for. So this gives you a lot of flexibility in editing if you want to increase the size of your image without deforming it in any way. This is a good option to be aware of as well. Image rotation. This is pretty much a standard in most softwares that's geared towards video. This one is pretty much a standard in almost every digital software that allows you to manipulate images. The trim, very similar to the crop. And you have a bunch of other things here that you probably won't use if you're using this for painting purposes, so I'm not going to go through them. You have layer mask options here. You can rasterize your image. All these are very specific to other applications, mainly image editing applications. So you may want to actually play with these a little bit if you get the time. A very useful tool in the select option is you can actually select a color range. So if you're trying to select all of that color within an image, you just go to select color range, and this allows you to do this. You can also load and save selections as well. Now, unless you actually save a file for it, you won't be able to access those save selections in a different image. Filters are useful, but only when you use it within moderation. You should never overuse these or become too overly dependent on these options. So you don't necessarily need to know them. The most that you might use is the blur, but the motion blur if you want to create a rain effect. That's probably going to be the easiest solution for that and saves a lot of time. But the other effects are really not necessary to know for drawing purposes. Analysis deals with doing measurements or collecting data based off image elements that you have. So once again, not related to digital drawings, so I will not cover this. 3D, this is when you import a 3D object and you want to actually paint on it, add it textures. You can actually do that currently in Photoshop CS5. I believe that was introduced in CS3 or CS4. You could change your view options, window options, and you also have the help panel if you need to access it. So that's really it for Photoshop. As you could see, once you learn the basics, you really don't need all the fancy stuff that you can actually find in it. It is good to have a general understanding of some of those features though, because they can be very useful. But if you're doing mostly digital painting, you don't require all that much knowledge in Photoshop. You essentially just need to know how to use your brush and how to modify your brush and how to modify your layers accordingly and change the blending modes. Once you know those two basics, really the rest is up to you because you can always use the default color swatches and default settings that are essentially already with Photoshop. So I hope you guys found this useful and I hope to see you guys soon. So thank you and take care.